Today, as societies wrestle with questions of identity, belonging, and belief, religion remains a potent force. But too often it is weaponized, used to draw boundaries rather than build bridges. We see it in the rhetoric of nationalism cloaked in religious garb, in the persecution of minorities, or the defenestration of immigrants in the name of purity, in the silencing of dissent as heresy, in the conflation of divine will with political power. In telling me this, Professor Dr. Luke also mentioned not just that he was from my constituency, but that he was an Anglican and a worshipper at the Christ Church in my constituency. And that struck me as interesting because if Archbishop Tutu taught us anything, it is that religion can be both balm and blade. Across history and across continents, faith has been invoked to heal and to harm. It has inspired movements of liberation and justified systems of oppression, including the one in this country. It has built sanctuaries of refuge, and it has built walls of exclusion. Today, as societies wrestle with questions of identity, belonging, and belief, religion remains a potent force. But too often it is weaponized, used to draw boundaries rather than build bridges. We see it in the rhetoric of nationalism cloaked in religious garb, in the persecution of minorities, or the defenestration of immigrants in the name of purity, in the silencing of dissent as heresy, in the conflation of divine will with political power. And yet Desmond Tutu's theology offered a counter-narrative. He believed that faith at its deepest is not about dogma. It is about dignity. Not about orthodoxy. It is about empathy. Not about exclusion. It is about embrace. Not is it about prejudice, but, as he shared along the Dalai Lama, faith is about joy. He understood that peace is not merely the absence of war or conflict, it is the presence of justice, the restoration of relationships, the recognition of our shared humanity. And to build such peace requires more than policy. It requires moral imagination. What is moral imagination? It's the ability to see the world not only as it is, but as it could be. It is the courage to envision reconciliation where others see only revenge. It is the audacity to believe that enemies can become neighbors, that strangers can become kin. It is the capacity not just to sympathize, but to empathize, to see ourselves in the plight of others. In our fractured world, this moral imagination is in short supply. We are trained to fear difference, to retreat into echo chambers, to flatten complexity into caricature. But Tutu's life reminds us that empathy is not weakness, it is strength. That solidarity is not surrender, it is salvation. What if I told you that division is the most expensive tax we pay, not levied by governments, but by the erosion of trust? When confidence breaks down between neighbors, businesses, and institutions, the consequences ripple far beyond politics. Economies stall, investment retreats, and ordinary citizens bear the cost, not in rupees or dollars, and not just, but in opportunity, in dignity, in hope. We live in an age where headlines reward outrage and punish menace, where nuance is discarded as irrelevant, where belief, faith, and tradition, once sources of solace and solidarity, are too often weaponized to divide rather than to heal. We must confront this reality head-on because true prosperity does not come from slogans or spin, it comes from moral courage. And when leaders choose short-term gain over the common good, the result is a poverty that runs deeper than economics, a poverty of spirit, a poverty of ethics, a poverty of shared purpose. I am a Hindu, and I learned from the great preacher Swami Vivekananda, who took Hinduism to the world in the late 19th century, that Hinduism stands for both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, he spoke, but we accept all religions as true. This was a profound insight, and that too in the late Victorian era. I, after all, went to school in India, studied history, and learned that tolerance is supposed to be a virtue, that the tolerant king is a good king because he allows you to believe things he doesn't believe. But in fact, what Vivekananda was telling us is that tolerance is ultimately a patronizing idea. It is saying that I have the truth, you are in error, but I will magnanimously indulge you in your right to be wrong. That is not enough. And what Vivekananda taught us Hindus is that we must replace tolerance with acceptance. That is, we must say, I believe I have the truth. You believe you have the truth. I will respect your truth. Please respect my truth. And in that, we have the great recipe for human and interreligious coexistence.